What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we've got some Tamers to talk about. You see, BT9 is revealed at this stage, but we have a few Tamers we've not yet spoken about. So this is one of those situations where we could get very, very upset about the fact we've not talked about it, or we could have a look at these Tamers. So let's start off having a little bit of a look at Tai Kamiya and Carry Kamiya. Yeah, that's right. The family's back together. Now we've got a dual red and yellow colour Tamer here, 4 cost to play, but it is a dual Tamer, so we would expect a 4 cost. At the start of your turn, if you have 3 or fewer security cards, you gain a memory. If your opponent has 3 or fewer security cards, gain a memory. And this is very much like so many of these cards we've seen in the past. These dual Tamers tend to get you a couple of memory. The thing that worries me here is that in the early game, this is not going to do much. Like, you start with 5 security, so you start gaining a memory when you've lost 2 or when your opponent's lost 2, but how many games have we played where either ourselves or our opponents have taken out 5 security and 1 in one go, 1 turn Windex, things of that nature, built up their board and won all in one go? I think there are going to be many games where this is not going to work. Yellow recovery decks where they go down to 3 but then they go back up again. That's a bit of a pain. If you or your opponent's got 4 or 5 security, then that means you're not going to be getting the extra memory here, and I'm sorry, I'm just not a fan of this. I like it more than the 2 memory we can get from the next one. More on that in a moment. But, compare that to, say, TK Takaishi and Izzy Azumi. That gives you a memory if you have a level 5 or higher Digimon, and if your opponent has a level 5 or higher Digimon. Well, actually, yeah, you're both very much aiming to do that. You're not generally holding off on getting your level 5s out. You might be holding off on taking security while you build up your board, so no, I'm not loving this one. But also on your turn, when your red or yellow Digimon attacks, you may suspend this Tamer to give all of your opponent's security Digimon minus 2,000 power for the turn. And this one I actually like an awful lot, because it's only minus 2,000, right? It's not loads, we ain't pretending it's loads. But it's going to break the tie. So, if you were attacking with an 11,000 power Digimon, then all of a sudden you only get deleted if you hit a 13,000, which they're out there, but they're really the higher end of level 6s. So now all of a sudden your 11,000 power level 6, rather than being worried about hitting level 6s, isn't anymore. And I like this part of the skill, bearing in mind this absolutely works as a stacking thing. So you could have multiples of these dudes out, and then there'd be minus 4,000, minus 6,000. We've seen a bunch of cards that lower or raise security Digimon's power, going right back to the TK Takaishi from the starter deck, the first yellow starter deck, and they've never really seen a huge amount of play. They've never been that great. So this one, I like it, but I'm not sure how much play this is going to see, because I don't know how often you're going to gain the memory. I do like lowering security Digimon, but that's not a skill we've necessarily been taken advantage of. Now, Matt Ishida and Sora Takenouchi here, we got a similar kind of thing. We got a dual colour Tamer, this time we're talking blue and red. We got a 4 cost Tamer, and we got a skill that could give you 2 memory, but rarely will. At the start of your main phase, if you have 8 or more cards in your hand, get a memory. If your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand, gain a memory. And look, we know this can work. We know this is the kind of thing that absolutely could be a thing, but we also know that this is awkward. This is not the kind of thing that tends to work as often as we might like. We saw the Old Force Digimon starter deck, which was really built around a whole bunch of cards that wanted to have 8 or more cards in hand. The Old Force Digimon itself unsuspended. And there are certainly ways to do it, and I've seen decks play in this, but it is very much the exception. If you've got to try really hard to get 8 cards in your hand to gain that memory, your opponent is not going to be trying that hard to get 8 cards in their hand and gain that memory for you, so no, I don't think this is going to work very much at all. There are other dual colour Tamers I like a lot more. But on your turn, when one of your blue or red Digimon becomes unsuspended, like that All Force Digimon we just mentioned a moment ago as an example, you may suspend this Tamer to return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to its owner's hand. But it's only a level 3, and it goes to their hand so they can replay it. And it's just awkward. Like, if I'm playing that All Force Digimon starter deck, I actually really like this Tamer. Because it's gaining me memory, and it's putting level 3s back to my opponent's hand and all of that. That's beautiful. But, and again, if you want to argue with me, please do. Let me know in the comment section why I'm wrong about this. I just don't like this one at all. This seems like a Tamer that I'm just never going to play. So how about instead we have a look at Daigo Nishijima, a free-cost Tamer who's actually coming along by himself. I know. On all turns, when an opponent's Digimon becomes unsuspended in a main phase, you may suspend this Tamer to gain a memory. And I like that it could be you or your opponent. Now, this is unsuspended in a main phase, not during your unsuspend phase, but we've seen there are so many cards around, this could work. Again, there are a million different Tamers out there that can get you memory without being so restrictive, but in some decks this could work. But then on your turn, when one of your Digimon digivolves into a black level 6, it gains blocker. And I like this. Because the fact of the matter is, your level 6s are going to be big, right? They're going to be big, they're going to be powerful, they're going to have lots of DP. And that means they're going to make pretty good blockers. Now, sure, if you attack on your turn, then you're going to be suspended for your opponent's turn, unless, of course, you've got Reboot, which is one of the things that Black does better than anyone else. And let's face it, we've got Toy Agumon. And Toy Agumon is just an ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill level 3 Digimon that gives Reboot as an inheritable skill, so it's really not hard to get Reboot as a Black deck. And now, all of a sudden, you've got that combination of Reboot and Blocker. And I talked about this a lot back when we had Booster 1.0, and we had that War Greymon that had both Reboot and Blocker, and I adore it. Because essentially what it does is it allows you to attack on your turn, unsuspend, block on your opponent's turn, unsuspend, and round we go. So you're always able to attack on your turn and block on your opponent's. Now, admittedly, this is not quite the same. Daigo here is only giving it to you for one turn, but if you've got Reboot, you can attack, and then you unsuspend, and now you've got a big, powerful blocker, potentially at a super key moment, and it's a blocker your opponent may not have been expecting? Yes. And of course, now, while Daigo's on the field, your opponent has always got to ask the question, is it possible for my opponent to Digivolve into a level 6? If it is, then they could have one more blocker. So when your opponent's trying to do their calculations of how many attacks they need to do to win the game, they're always going to have to imagine you might have a blocker, whether you do or not. I really like this one. I think this is one that could absolutely help out Black decks. Having those blockers coming out when your opponent doesn't know if they are. I mean, obviously, when they see Daigo on the field, they're going to know it could come. But the fact that your opponent won't know if it is or not, that makes me very, very happy indeed. But if you want to see something really cool, how about Cool Boy? Literally, it's called Cool Boy. That's the Tamer's name, apparently. A 2-cost white Tamer, so nice and cheap. When you play, you reveal 3 cards on the top of your deck. Add a Digimon card with X-Antibody in its traits and an option card with X-Antibody in its traits to your hand, and put the remaining cards to the bottom of your deck in any order. And then on your turn, when one of your Digimon digivolves into a Digimon of the same level, with X-Antibody in its traits, you may suspend to draw a card. This I absolutely flat out adore. Now here, we are talking along the lines of Agumon X-Antibody, because remember the X-Antibody cards can generally digivolve from their namesake for either 0 or very cheap. So Agumon X-Antibody can digivolve from Agumon for 0 cost. And that's essentially what they're saying here. If you digivolve Agumon, a level 3, into Agumon X-Antibody, a level 3 with X-Antibody in its traits, you can suspend to draw a card. And in an X-Antibody deck, I absolutely adore this. This one is phenomenal. I've not been gushing about the previous Tamers. I don't think they are phenomenal. This one, oh my goodness, I do think this one's amazing. Obviously, if you're not playing an X-Antibody deck, it's terrible. And when I say X-Antibody deck, I don't mean like the Alphamon decks we've seen in the past. That's not the kind of thing we're talking about here. We are talking about specifically the things that have come around in this set, where you've got all of the so-and-so X-Antibody, where you are digivolving a level 3 into a level 3, a level 4 into a level 4, etc. But if you're doing that, then you play it for consistency, and then it sits there as a bit of a draw engine. And in theory, if you can get 4 of these out, you can digivolve and draw 4 cards. Yes, that's my kind of Tamer. This, for me, is absolutely the star of this video. Of the 4 Tamers we've looked at, this is, as far as I'm concerned at least, by far the best. But I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWazzy. That's where we talk Digimon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching Wassy Plays.